Ever since I've been sharing my fabric journal covers with you, you have been asking me for a tutorial. So today, the very first day of the My Heart of Thanksgiving event, I am showing you how I made this slow stitched fabric junk journal cover. Here we go, y'all. Well, hello and welcome to Pink Paper Peppermints. My name is Melissa and I am so glad you're here today on the very first video of the 5th annual My Heart of Thanksgiving event. And if you don't know what that is, I've got some info on the screen for you, and you can go to pinkpaperpeppermints.com and find out all about it. What you're seeing right now is our just part of the collection for our challenge this year, and it is so much fun. There are so many fun pieces, and if you'd like to find out more about that, you can click on the link in the description below and it'll take you right to it. Well, what we're going to do today is make my journal cover for our Thanksgiving journaling challenge. And I am using something you've probably seen me use before. It's a piece of an old blanket from an estate sale. And I just measured out the size that I want using a piece of ledger paper. And I will put those measurements in the description. And if I remember, I'll put them on the screen for you here. And I am using that blanket as the inside. And then I found this beautiful vintage calico fabric that I want to be the front of my cover, and so I'm just using the piece that I cut out with the pattern as a pattern for that calico. And then I've got some red vintage fabric here that I'm using on the spine, and I'm just auditioning different pieces that I want to stitch on. And I will tell you that this segment could be very long because I overthought this a lot, and then finally I just said, you know, I'm always telling everyone don't overthink it, and I just picked up all the pieces that I liked and went to the sewing machine and just started stitching. And that worked really well. Then I was done because I sat there moving pieces around for so long. So this was the final result of just the pieces that I stitched on. I've got more stitching to do, but I stitched these on with my sewing machine. So I kind of cheated slow stitch wise, but we're starting this weekend and I wanted to get my cover done. This trim is so beautiful. I wish you could see it in person. I believe my friend Abby from at Little Birdie Blessings gave that to me, but it might have been my friend Deborah from at Sparkling Dot Faith. She gives me lots of things too. So this is a really fun jar of goodies. It's like a candy jar to me, and what it is are vintage yo-yos that I bought, and I will link the shop that I bought these below. I got these and I just love looking at them, and I knew when I was going to do this journal cover that I wanted to sew some of these on. So I had so much fun picking out all the colors of the ones that I wanted to use, and I stitched those on. And then while I was stitching those on, I also just took a few little stitches in the fabric. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention was that I put some quilt batting behind this piece of calico so that when I took the little stitches in there, it kind of gave it a quilted look. You can see it puckered up here, and I'll show you a close-up picture. And then I also sewed some sequins on. That lace I kind of left flippy like that because I just really liked it like that. And then I did the same thing on the spine. I just sewed a few sequins on, and this is, I'm telling you, I am not a seamstress. This is the easiest kind of sewing you can do. There's no measuring. You're just putting needle and thread and then just pulling it through and creating tiny little stitches on your fabric. And there's that. I'm showing you that gold trim again because I wish y'all could see it in person. It's so amazing. It's like little coils of gold metal. So pretty. So now that I've got that all done, I want to do my inside, and I wanted to make a pocket. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Super simple. You just take the piece that you want to be your pocket piece, and you are going to measure it to be the same size but half the height, the same width but half the height of your inside page. And I'm flipping this back and forth trying to decide which side to use because I love both sides. And I think I end up deciding that this side I have some brown vintage pom-pom trim, and I think that the white side looks much better with that. So I take that over to my sewing machine and sew it up on 3 sides. And you can see here, actually what I did first was sew the pom-pom trim to that top of that piece of fabric and then sewed it to the 3 sides of my inside page. And you can see that I don't know what I did here, but I've got it sewn kind of crooked, and that's going to come up later. But we will deal with it. So that's what it looks like completed. And the page now is all ready to put together with the front cover. So what we're going to do is put right sides together. So your outside pages, you want them facing each other. And you're just going to kind of center it up, and you're going to have some extra around the edges, and that's fine. You just want to make sure that any pieces, like you see this lace here, how it's sticking out over the edge, anything that's sticking out over the edge is going to end up inside, sewn inside your cover, and we don't want that for that lace. So I'm just tucking that in. And then I'm going to go around the edges of my cover and just do that with everything. So like this little piece of crochet, I think that I want that hanging out the front of my book. So I want to make sure and tuck that in so it doesn't get sewn into the inside of the cover. And that little string, I'll tell you about that later. I want that also, so I don't want that to get sewn. And then here I've got a little piece of lace that I want to kind of stick out like a tab. So I'm going to tuck that in as well. And you just want to go around all the edges of your cover before you get ready to sew and pin it together and make sure those are all tucked in. So I pinned it together, and then I remembered that I wanted to do ribbon ties. So I took my ribbon, I cut it into two long lengths and rolled it up so that we can tuck it inside, because remember, we don't want anything sticking out. Anything sticking out is going to get sewn up. So we want a tiny little bit of that ribbon to be sticking out. And that's going to get sewn into the inside of the journal so that when we turn this inside out, you're going to be able to tie it. You're going to have your tie. So most of the ribbon is going to be tucked in. Just a tiny little bit is going to stick out the side there. And when I finish sewing this, my team member Lisa, you are forbidden from watching this part because she is quite the seamstress. So I am not, and I don't want her to see this. But okay, so I've got it all sewn up here. I did about 1/4 of an inch around the edges of the journal. You can see my ribbon poking out the sides there. And I'm going to take the pins out and get ready to turn it inside out. Before I do that, I'm just going to trim off the extra fabric that is around the edges so we don't have too much bulk. I'm going to do like a little diagonal cut here and then just trim off some of the extra fabric on the sides, and you just want to make sure you don't come too close to those stitches. Then I'm going to put my hand inside and kind of push the corners in and pull those through. And this was a little tricky because my cover was really bulky and I kind of wish that I had left myself more room. I could barely get my hand in that hole. But it worked out okay. It took me quite a while to do it because I had to be really careful because I didn't want to pull my sequins and my metal trim and everything off. So you're going to get it pulled inside out and your cover is almost finished. Now, I literally did this in 2 days, including all the stitching, the hand stitching, and I was filming at the same time. So I really think that you could make this journal cover in a weekend. It's just scraps and pieces sewn together, and then you saw what I did. Put the two right sides together, sew it around the edges, flip it inside out, and you're almost finished with this cover. So now is where you kind of go around and fuss with it a little bit. I use some scissors or chopsticks to poke those corners out, and you can see here I completely missed the edge of the fabric, so you can see some of the batting, and I'm fine with that. I can fix that. That's the edge that was messed up, by the way, that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to fix that in just a minute, but one more thing I wanted to show you is I took a piece of watercolor paper and rolled it up, and I'm just going to stick that inside to kind of give it some stability. Now, if you like a really soft, floppy fabric cover, you don't need to do this step, but I like it to have a little stability, mostly because I take a lot of pictures of my journals, and so it helps me if they can stand up on their own. So I put a little bit of cardstock or cardboard, or in this case watercolor paper. Frankly, whatever is closest to where I'm working is what I use. And I just cut it to size and play with it a little bit and get that in there. And then you can see how it really gives shape to your cover. And so then I go in and kind of pinch my 1-inch spine with my fingers and kind of form that paper so that it gives me that 1-inch spine. Now, I'm not sure what kind of binding I'm going to do on this, so I will probably do that in another video, but let's go ahead and fix these areas here. Basically, all I'm going to do is tuck the fabric in, and here's the side. You see how I've kind of wrapped it into where that paper is and wrapped it around that paper and tucked it all in, and I kind of just used my fingers to press it down, and then I took it over to the iron and pressed it really well so that it would be really flat. And if you didn't want your stitches to show, you could blind stitch it by hand right here, but I did not do that. I just used my machine and just did a little top stitch, and that worked completely fine. And I did the exact same thing in that place that was kind of messed up by the ribbon. I did the same thing there. On this side, this was where the opening was. I used brown thread on the top and white thread on the bottom, and it's a little crooked there, but once you get your journal in, this is our Traveler's Notebook insert that we're using this year, you won't even see that. So I'm not worried about it, and you shouldn't worry about it either. If you make a bunch of mistakes, it's fine. That's why we call them junk journals, right? So that is how you make a journal like this. If you need help or you have questions, just let me know in the chat or in the description, in the comments below, and I will be happy to help you. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. I cannot wait to see you next week, and I hope you have a week filled with peace and grace, and I will see you next time here on Pink Paper Peppermints.